And Syria now with Michel Chossudovsky. He's joining us on the line from Canada. He's director of the Montreal-based think tank, the Centre for Research on Globalisation. Michel, very good evening to you. Thanks for being with us. First off, I mean, Russia's clearly disappointed, isn't it, by how the UN resolutions have been implemented in Libya. The Russian foreign minister reiterated it again today. How much damage do you think has been done here to the way things work at the UN?
I think disappointment is an understatement, because at this stage, NATO, in consultation with the Pentagon, is preparing a new phase of this war. In other words, a process of military escalation, which could eventually lead to the landing of US NATO commandos on Libyan soil. In other words, they are in the process of changing the terms of reference of the so-called no-fly zone to supporting a ground war. And this has been very clearly stated, that they want the air campaign to support the ground war. And they've shifted now into, they've shifted the emphasis from aerial bombardments to helicopter operations, as well as low-flight operations over Libya, which would be, of course, supportive of boots on the ground. So this is a very disturbing development, and it certainly indicates an escalation in military activities. Another aspect is the fact that the USS George H.W. Bush Supercarrier, which is the most advanced military vessel in the world. It's the largest of the U.S. naval arsenal. It's on its maiden voyage to the Mediterranean to join up with the Sixth Fleet in Naples. And this supercarrier is equipped with aircraft, helicopters, close to 6,000 troops on board, sailors, marines, and so on. And this doesn't send the right message. It's certainly not within the framework of Resolution 1973.
Michel, all this just after calls last week at the G8 summit that Russia joined in with for Colonel Gaddafi to go, but only if it's done diplomatically. Now, at the time, as you know, that initiative was praised and encouraged. Then we see this, NATO extending its operation for 3 more months. Why won't they stop the airstrikes and let Russia try diplomacy?
Well, but they've already decided on a major war theatre. Their objective is to subdue the enemy into total submission. Just now, you know, you have to read between the lines, but while President Obama was in London for his official summit late last month, what was happening in the military sphere was the carrying out of extensive war games which were called Saxon Warrior. And this involved, again, the USS H.W. Bush with its strike carriers, etc., but it also involved participation of several NATO countries, including Britain, France, Sweden was also involved, Spain was also involved, and they were essentially simulating the real war in the Mediterranean. It was in a maritime environment, and it was an exercise which was designed to develop theater-specific combat skills. So we're no longer in the sphere of diplomacy. We're no longer in the sphere of aerial bombardments under no-fly zone concept. This is all-out war, and I think it's about time that the so-called international community realize that this is a war of aggression in violation of international law.
I want to briefly talk about. I'm taking everything we're saying there. While you're on the line, I want to talk to you briefly about Syria as well, and the trust between NATO and Russia and what's happening there. Just for a minute, and let's talk about Syria then. Its leader Bashar al-Assad could be next in line, maybe, but you know, Russia is saying it won't even read a resolution on Syria now. Is it possible that NATO or a coalition of the willing could launch an operation anyway?
Well, I mean, the situation in Syria is very, I mean, it's also very serious, because we know, and it's documented, that there was an armed insurgency directed against the police and the military, and that this armed insurgency was supported and financed by foreign powers. It's well documented. And the question is, were there acts of provocation in Syria which triggered these protests, and which are now being used to threaten Syria with possible regime change or intervention and so on? We still have to understand that Syria, despite its shortcomings and of the government, is a secular state. It has a high degree of tolerance of religious and ethnic groups compared to other parts of the Arab world. And any kind of intervention in Syria, I think, would also be a derogation of international law. It's obvious that the United States and its allies are involved in acts of aggression which are devastating in terms of their likely consequences. The war in Libya is a major theater operation. Now more than 10,000 sorties using the most advanced equipment, the Mirage fighters, the B-2 bombers, and then they claim that they're there to protect the lives of civilians.
Michel Chossudovsky, Director of the Montreal-based think tank, the Centre for Research on Globalisation, thank you for your views on our